Assalamu alaikum dear students, and welcome to the KIPS distance learning program Current Affairs Newspaper Roundup session. I am your host Shahrukh Haider, and the topic for today is the Iran nuclear deal, how to understand it, why was it withdrawn by the United States of America, and what kind of implication has that had on the relationship between the United States and Iran, and how is Iran coping up in a post US sanctions world. So first of all, we must look at a bit of history of US-Iran relations, which have been sour ever since the Iranian Revolution of 1979. That was an Islamic revolution. The massive build-up of anti-American sentiment within the population of the Iranian people due to massive American intervention into their domestic affairs, into their oil, into their politics, into their system. There was a lot of pent-up anger and built-up hatred against the United States and the Iranian population, which was quite rightly capitalized on by the religious leader of Iran, Ayatollah Khomeini, who brought the 1979 Iranian Revolution, after which the United States Embassy in Tehran was stormed by Iranian students who took hostage nearly 100 of the staff of the US Embassy in Tehran and kept them for more than a year. So that was the start of the intense rivalry between the United States and Iran. And after the launch of the global war on terror by the United States and the invasion of Afghanistan and then the invasion of Iraq, Iran realized that it was the next target of the United States foreign policy, and if it does not secure its position in the world, the United States might just invade Iran and as well overthrow, topple the Islamic regime and establish a puppet government in Iran, as well as US has done in a number of cases all around the world. So that is when Iran realized that it needs to develop something that would ensure its national security, especially after the Iraqi invasion of 2003. And then that is when in 2004 Iran started to become serious about its nuclear program, started to invest a lot of money into developing its weapons grade nuclear program to deter any American direct intervention and toppling of the Islamic regime. Those ambitions were discovered in 2004 and 5 by the International Atomic Energy Agency, and the world community was informed about Iran's nuclear ambitions. Now, due to the Non-Proliferation Treaty of 1968 and the Nuclear Suppliers Group formation of 1974 and many other nuclear agreements in following years, created an international non-proliferation regime which was meant to prevent any country in the world to acquire nuclear weapons besides the already 5 established nuclear powers, which were United States, Russia, China, Britain and France. Now this meant that any country that had nuclear ambitions would face the wrath of these 5 powers and the international community in order to pressurize them to not build nuclear weapons. Similar pressure was also placed on Pakistan, for example in the case of the Plessner Amendment and other US sanctions, which tried to deter Pakistan from achieving nuclearization, but Pakistan achieved nuclearization anyway. And such was the target of the Iranian Islamic regime as well. Now, due to massive sanctions on Iran, international sanctions, UN sanctions and US sanctions due to its nuclear program, Iran's economy was nosediving, and Iran's due to socio-economic backwardness and the economic impact of those sanctions and increasing unemployment, there was a lot of pressure on the Islamic government of Iran to do something about it because their economy was in free fall, and if conditions were to persist like that, social agitation would start and there were chances of a counter-revolution in Iran that would throw the original revolutionary Islamic government of Iran. Therefore, Iran's leaders decided to, resort to diplomacy rather than, outright rivalry and escalation with the United States that was traditionally Iranian foreign policy up to that point. Especially Iran's moderate president that was elected, Rouhani, he was in the favor of negotiations, and therefore, due to a positive environment in Iran's leadership and in Obama administration at that time, a nuclear deal was reached between the United States and Iran, which included other 5 powers The deal is also known as P5+1, which means that the 5 original nuclear powers and Germany, or otherwise more technically known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, which was signed and came into force in 2015. Now, according to the treaty, Iran was to end all of its nuclear ambitions, stop trying to enrich uranium for weapons grade level, and immediately halt and undo all of the research and enrichment of uranium that it had done for developing a nuclear weapon. Moreover, Iran would also open all of its nuclear sites to the international inspectors of the International Atomic Energy Agency. In return, the international community, the UN, the European Union and the United States would lift all economic sanctions on Iran and welcome Iran into the International Comity of Nations and help Iran become economically stable and bring, employment and all kinds of economic opportunity to the people of Iran. Now, up until 2017, that deal was working quite fine. And Iran was emerging as an important center for oil purchase, and Iran's economy was starting to grow and employment was increasing, and Iran was to a large extent, according to International Atomic Agency, completely complying with its end of the bargain in the deal, and it was not building any suspicious nuclear designs. And Iran was gaining a lot of things in return for that compliance, and European Union companies were starting to open up their offices and start their businesses and manufacturing activities in Iran and Iranian cities all around the country, and Iran was kind of being welcomed into the 21st century. However, Donald Trump was elected in 2016 as the US president, and even during his campaign, he explicitly stated that the Iran nuclear deal was the worst deal of the century, the worst deal ever hit, and if he became president, he would completely repeal it. And he fulfilled his promise by withdrawing United States from the Iran nuclear deal in 2017, despite the fact, in 2018 actually, despite the fact that Iran was completely complying with International Atomic Energy Agency's requirements and not engaging in any nuclear enrichment abilities. So what are the important reasons for Trump's withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal? Well, first of all, as with most of the agreements that were reached before Trump by Obama, Trump seeks to undo and erase Obama's legacy from the Iranian administration, from the American administration and the American public's memory. Second of all, Iran was the major winner in the Iran nuclear deal, and its economy was building substantially. Its regional clout, its proxy warfare all around the region was also becoming increasingly assertive because of economic strength that Iran had achieved post the Iran nuclear deal. It was able to fund all its proxies around the region and become an important power broker in the Middle East, which was quite rightly seen in the case of the Syrian civil war, where when Iran got engaged in the civil war, which was originally becoming a battleground for loss for the Syrian regime, the Syrian Bashar al-Assad regime. After Iran's entrance, Bashar al-Assad started to substantially win the civil war, obviously in collaboration with Russian support as well. Thirdly, the Iran's International Intercontinental Ballistic Missile Program, ICBMs they are called, has been an important source of tension for not just Saudi Arabia but Israel as well, and Iran's missile program was actually not covered in the Iran nuclear deal, which is why Iran was able to develop it, and it was substantially building very threatening long-range weapons which were creating a sort of unstable situation and threatening the national security of Iran and Saudi Arabia, which are actually very close allies and have strategic partnership with the United States of America. So therefore, and the fourth reason, of course, being that Iran was massively winning the proxy warfare around the Middle Eastern region. Iran's regional influence and clout was substantially increasing. its influence was crossing all borders in the Middle East, and obviously that meant that the Saudi Arabia and its regime was losing its importance and regional influence. This was also threatening the national security of Israel. So therefore, due to a combination of these four factors that I've mentioned, Trump decided to withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal. He in turn reimposed United States sanctions upon Iran and engaged his maximum pressure campaign in order to push Iran to come onto the negotiation table and, according to Trump, create a new and more equitable deal that was not the worst deal of the century as was reached by the Obama administration. Now, conversely, European nations and the other members of the treaty, the deal, such as Russia, China and the European Union, are still committed to the Iran nuclear deal, and they have refused to back down from it due to US pressure, and instead they have put pressure on US not to abandon the deal and to rejoin it and not to reimpose sanctions on Iran and push Iran to restart its nuclear program once again, which essentially it has done due to massive US pressure campaign and US sanctions, which have once again pushing the Iranian economy down into the dirt, increasing unemployment and creating social unrest in Iran. So, but recently, especially since the mid of 2019, Iran is becoming more and more immune to US pressure and US sanctions, and finding alternative channels for commerce to the world, for selling its oil to the world, and creating bilateral relationships with different countries all around the world. For example, the European Union announced that due to US sanctions, which have a direct impact on all the countries that are trading or have any kind of economic relations with the country which has the economic sanctions imposed on it in the first place, means that Europe would also suffer from US sanctions if it traded with Iran and complied with its end of the bargain in the Iran nuclear deal. So European Union announced in this scenario that it would try to come up with alternative channels of finance and commerce in order to continue its economic relationship with Iran despite US sanctions. Furthermore, there is an emerging group in Asia, including China, Pakistan and Russia, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which are increasingly supporting Iran's stance in this matter and want to include Iran in the greater Asian bloc, best represented in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is also known as the NATO of the West. So this is why China and Pakistan want Iran to sustain the pressure, to not give in to the pressure, and Iran would probably restart its nuclear program, and in the future no one can say what will happen, but I think that the world community would once again intervene, and once Trump's get elected out in the next US elections, a more sensible democratic president in the form of Joe Biden might come onto the stage and start negotiations to restore the Iran nuclear deal. That seems like the most probable situation in this case. Thank you very much for your patience. Take care. Allah Hafiz.